Hi, welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. So today is this experiment, okay? I feel terrible. I've been sleeping all day. I was just getting ready to hit record and I had a sharp pain in my head. And I have my eyes closed and I was like, let's see what happens. Let's see if when I start talking, I sound upbeat. Let's see if this podcast is actually lifting me up, and how it comes across. And as soon as I started talking, that's how I felt. I felt like, yes, this is why I'm doing it. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel good on the inside, even if I physically don't feel well. So yay. That was pretty cool to kind of expect that, like see what happens. And it happened. So anyway, thank you for being here. I was looking yesterday before I went to bed at how many people listen to the podcast. And so I I definitely have over 100 subscribers across all the different platforms. And I mostly look at Spotify because that's where I actually upload the episodes. But when I go across all the different sorry, my head's hurting, so I'm having a hard time putting my words together. When I go across all the different platforms, I have at least like 150. I mean, more than that. I'm probably reaching a couple hundred subscribers. So anyway, it made me feel really good. And actually, I was like, I can't believe that. I can't believe all those people listen to me. So anyway, thank you. Thanks for tuning in and for feeling like you're getting value from stuff that I have to share with you. It makes me feel really driven to keep doing this and keep sharing my experience, and to all the folks who reach out to me. It's just so nice. It's so nice. I can't imagine if I was trying to recover in silence. It just would not be. I can't imagine the depression, and that's what it was like before I got sober. It's suffering in silence. So I'm hoping that I'm helping others to not do that as well. So today's writing prompt for the listener challenge, the Serenity Prayer Daily Reflection, is what does the wisdom to know the difference look like in your daily life? And don't forget to say your serenity prayer today. So today's topic is incredibly relevant to how I've been feeling lately. And so I've been realizing over the past month and really feel like I'm starting to maybe wrap my head around what I am doing mentally, and I'll try to explain it. It's not just catastrophic thinking, like the title of the episode says, but it's even more so related to complicating my situation, like complex thinking versus simple thinking. And so it's not just like when you drop your coffee and suddenly you're convinced that the universe is conspiring against your white shirt, which, side note, it is inevitable that I eat spaghetti on days that I wear a white shirt. It's the oddest thing, but if I wear a white shirt, it is guaranteed that somehow I will run across spaghetti that day. It's the weirdest thing, I swear. Anyway, this way of thinking, I'll try to describe. It's just a little bit more complex, I guess, than catastrophic thinking. So, you know how when you're a kid, you think very small, like the world is just what you can see and no bigger. Many of us as children imagine that the world revolved around us. Some people as adults think that the world revolves around them. But as you get older, the world gets bigger. And I imagine that in this day and age, our children are growing up and the world gets bigger for them faster. And I imagine that is a difficult way to grow up. But for me, the bigger the world gets, the more overwhelmed I am. And I imagine that's why I'm talking about the kids these days. I'm sure that it's very overwhelming to have a not quite mature mind and emotions, but yet the world is so big that I'm sure that that's very overwhelming. But that's a side note. I'm sure I'm not the only one. It's kind of related to that feeling of lacking control. So the bigger the world is, the more I see that I lack control over. The more my mind spins out of control. So I have spent the last 9 months that I've been doing this podcast, that I left my job. Um, Honestly, more than that, really, since I had my stroke, thinking about my life in its largest form, not thinking about where I am in my life today, where I am in time and space today, right here, right now, as I sit in my closet and talk on my podcast, not thinking of it small like that. I ever since my stroke, I'm thinking of my life as a whole, like my purpose, the life I have ahead of me, and how I'm going to spend it. Like I'm constantly thinking about from here where I am to the end of my life. I can't seem to focus on today anymore, like where I am here in space and time. It's like whenever I do anything, instead of looking at what I'm doing, I'm looking at the ripple effect of everything that I'm doing. I'm looking at the end of my story. Like right now, I'm constantly looking at the end of my story, my life story. And I've been recognizing that lately. So I'm trying to really remember what it's like when my kids were younger and I was in my house in Charlestown and my life was smaller, you know. I was more thinking about the day. How is today going to go? This is what I need to do today. And I'm trying to remember what that feels like and start thinking like that again. And I have had little tastes of it over the past couple days. So I thought I would talk a bit about catastrophic thinking because it seems related to how my mind has been working lately. So, why do we get into catastrophic thinking? Why does our mind write these horror movies out of everyday scenarios? You know, lately it's like when I get in a car, I plan out. I can give you an example. Like yesterday, was that yesterday? Yeah, yesterday when we were going to vestibular therapy, I put my dogs in their crate and I said, because I talk to my dogs like they're people. I was like, I'll see you later. I'm going to my vestibular therapist and then I'll be back. I think that I owe them the common courtesy to let them know where I'm going and when I'll be back. Anyway, I was putting them away and I don't know, I was thinking, what happens if I get in a car accident and I don't come back? Like, when's the next time that somebody would even come to this house and know that they're in here? Like, that's what I'm doing, but I'm doing it on a regular basis. Like, it's not healthy that my mind is doing that. Um, if there's a thunderstorm, my brain is thinking about the tornado that's going to wipe us all out. It's just unreasonable. So why do I do this? It's like, so I was listening to some articles, and it's a bit like our brain is trying to be helpful by preparing us for the worst, but it doesn't recognize that those are fiction. Fiction. Yeah. Non-fiction, non-fake. Fiction, fake. um, like our brain forgets to, or doesn't know that it's fiction. So I actually start playing out the movie like it's real life. And so traumatic events of the past, also anxiety disorders, depression, and even, interestingly enough, chronic pain can lead us down this path of distorted thinking. Interesting, huh? So it's like our mind is saying, like in a traumatic past event thing, hey, remember one time when things went south when you did this? Let's make sure that never happens again. But it's on repeat, and you can't get that out of your head. Like for me, I don't know that I've had some semi-traumatic events, but nothing really. Like, why do I think of a tornado wiping us out when we have a storm? I've never been in a tornado. So I think mine is very much like anxiety oriented. But what's interesting when I ran across this is that it lists chronic pain as something that causes folks to have catastrophic thinking. So, anyway, super interesting to me. But just like any habit, catastrophic thinking can be rerouted. So, cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness, and even some certain medications, it said, for underlying conditions, of course, like anxiety and depression, can help like turn that ship around. So the hard part, though, is recognizing when I'm going down the road of unrealistic thinking and choose to imagine the best instead of the worst. I went to a therapist once. This is before I got sober. I went to a therapist once, and we were talking about, I don't know. I guess I hadn't realized I was having catastrophic thinking, but she was like asking me what I thought was going to happen in a certain scenario. And I'm, it's listing all well, what if this happens? What if that happens? I was what ifing. And this is before like I said, before I got sober. So I hadn't really been introduced to all the amazing, principles and little sayings that I've learned in my sobriety program. But she said to me, have you ever stopped and tried to think of the best thing happening instead of the worst. And oh no, actually, this was my addiction therapist. So I had just gotten sober. She said, "Have you ever thought of the best happening instead of the worst?" And I was like, no. Like, why would I do that? So, no, I hadn't. And isn't that amazing? Like, I was 46 years old and I never really thought about the best happening, because it's just that's what we do. I think as human beings, we're trying to protect ourselves. So we think about prepare ourselves for the worst, like, okay, there's a thunderstorm coming. I'm going to prepare for a tornado. And it gets to the point for me that I get quite unreasonable. And then I'm spending a lot of time and energy, more so energy, preparing and thinking out solutions to problems that don't even exist. So I learned that when I was working, I got to really practice that a lot. Practice imagining everything going perfectly, and I was able to see that with practice, it is possible to cut off catastrophic thinking before it gets really, to the point of no return. Um, so instead of doing stuff like, like lately I've been waking up with, well, I guess this has been a while, waking up with this headache. And instead of being nurturing to myself, like if my son or my daughter had a chronic headache, how would I treat them? I mean, I would be so loving and nurturing, and I would, talk to them about it's going to be okay. It's going to subside soon. Let's get up. Let's get something to eat, and instead of doing that with myself, I have this tendency to convince myself that the pain is never going to go away and I'm going to be miserable for the rest of my life. Now, granted, I've been dealing with this for a couple years now, so it's a constant fight to convince myself that things are going to get better. But when I'm thinking I'm going to be miserable for the rest of my life, then it just makes things worse. It adds additional stress, anxiety, and isolation. When I'm feeling like I'm a victim of this chronic pain and that things are never going to get any better and bad things always happen to me, then I want to isolate myself. I don't want to talk to anybody. And that's the worst thing that I can do for my mental health is to isolate. And that starts with catastrophic thinking for me. So I was thinking about a funny scenario because when I was listening to these articles, one of them was talking about I think cross-stitching or something like that. Anyway, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I can relate to this. So I've been doing, learning how to sew or practicing sewing. Yeah, learning how to sew. And so I've been doing quilts. I'm working on my second quilt and it's beautiful, by the way. But before I started on this quilt, I sewed a pair of pajama pants. And the pajama pants were supposed to have a drawstring around the waist. And in order to put the drawstring in, I needed to create 2 buttonholes. And I could not, for the life of me, make these two buttonholes. I swear I felt it was like my sewing machine. Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, it should not be that hard to make a buttonhole. I was able to make one of them, but the other one I couldn't get it to work. I think it was the material was too thin or something like that. I'm not quite sure. But finally, um, one day I got so frustrated that I said the F word. And then I was like, okay, this is Rachel, come on. This is a hobby. You should not be up here saying the F word. So I said, okay, just stop. We'll come back tomorrow. So I stopped. I came back the next day and I went up there, and that's when I was able to make one of the buttonholes, but I still couldn't get the other one. And I actually, like, I practiced a bunch of times and it worked fine on the practice material. But when I would put the actual pants into the sewing machine, it wouldn't do it right. So frustrating. So, um, so the next day I tried to do it again. I got the one done, but the second one, then it wouldn't work. And so I didn't curse. I just said, that's it. I'm not going to put the buttonhole in. But I said to myself, I'm never sewing clothes again because I couldn't make a buttonhole. Like, that is the perfect example of catastrophic thinking. Are you kidding me? Like, you're never going to try to sew clothes again because you couldn't sew one buttonhole on one pair of flannel pajama pants. Like, that is unrealistic thinking. So, I'm going to try to remember that example when, when I'm dealing with things that I just resort to this catastrophic thinking. So, changing my catastrophic narrative requires me to change how I respond to my problems. So, I'm not ignoring them or pretending that I don't have big problems. Like, I'm not going to ignore the fact that I am disabled. I'm going to address that and do the things that I need to do for it. But I cannot look at my disability as if my entire life is over and I can never do anything fun again. That is exactly how I looked at sobriety. When I quit drinking, I thought life is never going to be fun again. Any of you people who stopped drinking, I imagine, I don't know who did not think that when they stopped drinking. I can't imagine somebody who stopped drinking and thought, it's okay, life's going to be grand. Life's going to be so much fun now that I quit drinking. That just doesn't seem to be the case for anybody I've talked to. But that's what I feel like I'm doing now is like, I can't drive. I can't ride my bike. I can't walk. I can't, I can't. Um, I I did the same thing when I quit drinking. Like, oh, well, I can't go to happy hours anymore. I can't hang out with my friends. I'm not going to be able to go to party. I'm not, you know, well, there was a whole door that opened for many doors that opened for me to learn about new things that I was going to enjoy. And to this day, I have so much more fun sober than I did when I was drinking. It's different fun. It's memorable fun. It's physical and emotional, and it touches all of my senses and touches all of those health, verticals for me: physical, spiritual, emotional, mental. That's the kind of fun I have now. When I was drinking, it was just, it certainly wasn't mental because I wasn't even present. Um, Anyway, I feel like I'm doing the same thing right now. But I'll tell you, I really have been enjoying sewing quilts, which is the strangest thing I never imagined. If you ask my mom also, she'd be like, "Oh, there's no way Rachel's ever going to be sewing quilts." But it is true. I really, really enjoy it. And I'm sure there are so many other things that I haven't even begun to scratch the surface with enjoying. So I know that there are great things here, and I imagine that with my vestibular therapy, there will be other things that I will be able to enjoy. I went to a vestibular support group today, and it was at 3 o'clock, and so I didn't say anything. I just sat and listened. There was probably about 25 people in there, and I was just listening because I don't even know if I'm fully diagnosed as having a vestibular disorder. I don't know when they're going to tell me that that's what I have, but they said they just keep saying your symptoms are consistent with a vestibular disorder and vestibular migraine. So I don't know when they're going to say, yep, that's what you have, or if they're ever going to say that. But there were a lot of folks in this support group that were talking about they use walking sticks. A lot of them don't have the ability to recognize where they are in space. So I don't know what that feels like. I don't have that, but they talk about just not knowing. I don't know. Maybe they feel like they're floating or something. I'm not quite sure. Like, many of them use these walking sticks as grounding to like know where the ground is, and it sounds terrible to me. And I was talking to my husband tonight, and he was like, and that's part of why it's kind of nice to go to these support groups, because although you can compare there are a lot of other benefits to being able to see what you still have, being grateful for what you still have. So they talked about a lot of stuff that I don't suffer from, but a lot of them did also talk about what I do suffer from, which is they called it visual, visual symptoms, visual vestibular, something like that. I can't remember what they said. Visual something. And that seems to be the stuff that I have. And but interestingly, I didn't hear anybody say that they couldn't drive or couldn't watch TV. Like, they all, some of them talked about having problems at the grocery store. Others talked about not being able to look at the surface of water, like at a swimming pool, which is one of my issues. Well, so the shop, supermarket, whatever I just called it, the grocery store, whatever. I have a problem being in an aisle. I have a problem walking upstairs with two handles on either side, like two I don't know, handrails on either side, that kind of thing. When I'm like in a tunnel almost, I don't know. And then like water moving. A lot of them talked about walking. The movement of walking is a lot. So I definitely could relate, but I thought it was interesting that I heard them talking about watching TV and stuff. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how they watch TV, but maybe eventually I'll be able to watch TV. We'll see. So it was helpful for my catastrophic thinking to go to this support group and hear not only that I don't have the worst of it, but also that there are solutions that people are finding to their issues. Um, so, as I was preparing for this podcast episode, I laid down, I slept like all day today, but at one point I laid down and recognized that I really need to start meditating again. I had forgotten really that I haven't been meditating because I've been all interested in this book that I've been listening to. I just finished it, but it was called North Woods, and it was really good. So I was so into that would listen to that before I go to bed and before I take my nap and stuff, that I realized I hadn't been meditating. And I think that it's real. I need time to spend recognizing my distorted thinking. I can't just go around thinking about, I can't do this, I can't do that, and then listening to a book and then picking back up at what I'm doing and continuing to feel sorry for myself. I have to take some time every day to gently steer my thoughts towards a realistic perspective, and um, because I don't want to end up doing the whole buttonhole thing again. I can acknowledge how difficult it is to sew a buttonhole without concluding that I should never sew a piece of clothing ever again for as long as I live. You know what I mean? I need to keep my head on straight. So, anyway, so as I was preparing for the episode and I lay down and I listened to the meditation, this only happens in sobriety, but the meditation was about simple thinking. And I thought, that is just crazy. It happens all the time when I'm in sobriety. I guess because I'm paying attention. But it seems like whenever I choose a topic for this episode, it's like the universe just builds wheels right under me and rolls me right down the path for that day to think on the topic, to contemplate on the topic that I choose. And so today was another one. So, anyway, health-wise, again, I didn't feel well today. It's been a busy couple days visiting with family, vestibular therapists. So I slept all day, which is very unusual, but I think it was good that I recognized that I needed to. Usually I would just push myself and feel like crap all day. But instead, I just laid back down. I got up and had lunch, and then I laid back down again, and I was in bed all day. So I will continue to rest until I get my energy back and stop feeling bad. Um, Today, I kind of felt like I spent the day at King's Dominion yesterday. I felt like I took a 12-hour car ride yesterday. So I find myself on days like these writing this narrative about how my life is never going to be enjoyable again, just like I did before I got sober. So I'm just going to instead, I'm going to do what I can to take care of myself. And like I would if it was one of my kids. So catastrophic thinking, it may have its roots in our experiences or in our fears, but it doesn't have to dictate our day-to-day life, and it can be rewritten. I think it takes practice and patience, a lot of patience, and sometimes a bit of professional guidance, which I'm also seeking in my psychiatrist. But the narrative of my life is absolutely mine to write, and I'm going to work on not trying to write the ending. It's like I keep trying to write the ending instead of staying right here where I am today. So thanks for joining me today on the Recovery Daily podcast. I'll talk to you tomorrow.